Going on? What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with First Read Fantasy. I am joined by my co-host Matt from the FF Mediators, and we're going to do our first not rookie, sorry, redraft. 12 team PPR. We are in the middle of OTAs, so we figured we'd get a little bit of a pulse as well as, do our first one of the offseason. We've done a lot of dynasty, we've done a lot of rookie. So we figured let's go ahead and do a redraft one. Matt, you ready to get into this thing, man?
Yeah, man, our first look at redraft. I'm pretty excited to see everyone's heads at and where we're going to get some picks going.
Absolutely. And we already have 6 people here on YouTube. So appreciate you guys that are watching. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up. And let's just get this ball rolling. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. Let's see. Which one do I want to do here? Let's try. Oh, not that one. Not that one. Let's see. There's me. There's Matt. I should have probably had some of this set up already. That's
Well, that's all
okay.
right, man. We're here to work through this together. We're excited to be doing our first look at redraft, really dive into this. We got a great group of people in here. Appreciate everyone who joined the mock draft. So I'm excited to get this thing started. It's June, but it feels like August. You know what I mean?
Oh god. Oh man. Yeah, it's gonna start pretty quickly, the season and the off season. But yeah, all right, let me zoom in on this draft board here so we get a good look, and let's go ahead and start the draft. So Matt, you're here at the 102. Again, this is PPR, one quarterback. And I'm actually kind of digging as you're over here making your pick. I guess I'll leave the clock at 1:30 just to give us some time to talk during our picks. But what are you thinking here? Do you like to go running back with the first pick if you're in the first three? Do you like to go wide receiver? How do you generally like to start your drafts?
Well, I was hoping for Jamar Chase, but we're already off to getting sniped with the first pick, so that's okay. I mean, really, with these top players, you can't really go wrong. I mean, you're just trying to return on the investment. I'm going to go with Saquon. Just where we stand right now, I think he's got a ton of upside as a running back. Great offensive line, good offense. So that's the pick I'm going to roll with.
Yeah, so I'm actually more on the side of Bijan over Barkley. I have Bijan and Gibbs ahead of Barkley this year. I do worry a little bit about the tread on the tires from last season, the very long season. I'm sure he's going to take care of his body, but I look at Bijan and he's going to catch a lot of passes in this offense, which raises his floor. And I feel pretty confident in Michael Penix to keep that offense afloat. So I do prefer him currently over Bijan right now. He's my RB1. But when you get to the back of these drafts, Matt, and I honestly really prefer to draft in the back of these drafts, and the reason being is that I just feel like there's a lot of value. There's a lot of players that you can get in the early second round that have top 5 to even top 3 upside. If you told me Christian McCaffrey finished number 1 overall, like, it wouldn't surprise me. If you told me Derrick Henry finished 1 overall, wouldn't surprise me. Same with Ashton Genty and Devon Achane. So I just feel like you're getting a lot of return when you talk about that return on investment. I feel like you're getting a lot of it. And I really try to get Brian Thomas Jr. as much as I can at the back end here. If Brian Thomas Jr. is gone, I go with Nico. The biggest concern is the health. He has missed a decent amount of games over the span of his career, every season, where Drake London, a little bit younger, has been healthier and, is just maybe the safer pick, but I'm going to go with Nico, who was on pace to be the wide receiver one if he didn't have that hamstring injury. So let's talk a little bit about Nico Collins. I'll take my next pick, and then we can kind of get into your pick. But when you think about Nico Collins, Matt, I mean, is there a world, in your opinion, that he can finish as the wide receiver one?
It's really unlikely to me. I do think he can finish top 12, but one overall, I just don't see it. There's too many big names that I believe in more. And I think we also have to remember, as good as Nico is, this offense completely changed. I mean, we added not only Higgins at the top of the second round, but they also added Jalen Noel. They added Christian Kirk. So they surrounded CJ Stroud with more weapons to kind of give him the opportunity to spread the ball around and keep the offense progressing forward. But in my eyes, I just don't see a world where Nico Collins is necessarily going to be the wide receiver one overall. But like I said, I do think he's a top asset. If we're talking dynasty, not necessarily in this draft, but I do think he's a really, really high asset. You should go get there as well. But in redraft at the 111, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Nico's, when you look at his first few games in the season, he had 4 straight games of over 100 air yards. I'm talking air yards, over 100. He had 17, 27, 12, and 33 in the first 4 games, and then 15 against Buffalo, where I don't even think he played. Yeah, he didn't even play, I don't think, the entire game, right? He had a 13.2% snap share. He had 2 targets, a touchdown for 78 yards. He has big playability. I get your take on, they've added weapons to that room, and so there is some concern with that. But to me, I look at Nico. I think he has that ability. He's a guy that's going to pretty much can almost do anything on the field, right? He can play a big slot role. He can play outside. He's athletic. I mean, this is a guy that ran a 4.5, which at his size at 6'4" is very solid. And I mean, he had 12 games last year, and he had 1,000 yards in 12 games. He was on pace for 1,500 if he played a full season. 17.6 points per game, which was 8th in the NFL last year. That's coming off of a 2023 season where he was 7th in points per game with 17.4 in 2023. I think there's a world. I mean, the thing about Nico is he doesn't need a lot of volume to put up points. And I think that's the value. He has like breakaway speed and big playability. And I think that's what makes him appetizing. I don't think we're talking about a guy who had 68 catches and 1,000 yards on that, 14.8 yards per catch, 15 in 2023 at 16.2 yards per reception on 100 and I'm sorry, on 80 receptions. I mean, those are pretty strong yards per reception numbers, and it just goes to show like he's a guy that can, provide yards after catch as well. And he's a good deep ball receiver as well. So I like Nico there. I kind of go back and forth. I'd rather BTJ. I think I do lean Nico over Drake London, but look, I get it. I just think when we talk about, is there, I mean, let me ask you, I mean, is there a guy outside of Nico, right, that's on the board with, like, you can include London since he went after I took Nico, but is there a guy that you think has wide receiver one potential that was on the board if you include London?
Yeah, London's the immediate pick for me. I mean, he was wide receiver 5 last year, so I think we're kind of taking for granted how well he played already. I mean, yes, we're getting a quarterback change, but we kind of already saw it a little bit with Michael Penix. And like I said, I just think London's talent is already proven. I mean, he was wide receiver 5 last year, like I said, 100 targets, or excuse me, 100 receptions on 158 targets with almost 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. And I see a world where that gets better. Another name that I think we could talk about is someone who was just picked a second ago, and that's AJ Brown. I'm not the
Mm.
biggest fan of AJ Brown, but he is talented enough to do it. I think it might be a little bit surprising, but he's got a history of playing well, multiple years in the top 10, one top 5, one top 6, I believe. So he's a big time playmaker, man. And if he finds the right way to get hot with Jalen Hurts, say maybe they ban the tush push, not that matters much, but it might just influence it just enough. And when we're talking about an extra touchdown or two, that can kind of swing some fantasy points in your favor.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, it's close, and I think the one thing I'll give Drake London, and I think we are splitting hairs, right? I mean, I'll probably go back
Mhm.
and forth on both guys, a lot this offseason. The one thing I would say about London that's in his favor is, look, they both play in a dome, but London's defense, Atlanta's defense is going to be much worse. Much, much worse. So there is a very strong possibility. And honestly, the more that we talk through it, I think you're probably right. I think London has a higher chance. But you also have to hope that Michael Penix does, quote unquote, hit, right? And he does, we've only seen a small sample size. So that's also the possible worry. But again, positive game script. The thing that I worry about the Texans the most is, they ran, I think, like bottom third in the league for plays last season, right, on offense. So with added weapons plus, a very slow like tempo offense, there is concern there. So I can definitely get on board with that. It's so early that I'm not necessarily locked in on anybody right now. Other than I don't think I'm going to move off of Bijan. I think Bijan's probably locked in for me at the one.
Yeah, I don't think you're necessarily crazy for having Bijan there. I do think, like you said before, some of these players were splitting hairs at the top of the draft. It's just so much talent. But here I'm at the 211, and I think last year I did this several times. I took Josh Allen really early, and it paid off for me. I don't do a bunch of redraft, but the redraft teams I had Josh Allen, and it worked out. Now, I was hoping for Bucky to make his way back to me. That did not happen. So you hate to see that, but that's all right. Let me ask you, Pete, are you comfortable taking a guy like Josh Allen or a quarterback even this early in a redraft?
So I've done it before. I don't know if I want to take him at the 211 only because I look at Jaden Daniels, who typically is a guy that slides to like the third round. I mean, the fourth round, right? A lot of times, but it's all depends on draft position, right? I mean, right here, like you probably could have waited on Allen, and if you got Bucky and ended up getting Lamar or Jaden Daniels, if you still wanted to swing on quarterback, I think you'd be okay with it. Right now, you're kind of in a position where I'm sure you like Higgins, but you really liked Bucky, and so I think unless you really think that Allen's going to be a decent amount different, and or decent amount better on a points per game basis over Lamar and Jaden Daniels, I think you probably should wait there, in my opinion. If you do want to swing quarterback early, just take him on that turn at the 3-2, just so that you make sure you secure the guy that you want.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Of are you splitting hairs between him and Lamar? I do think Lamar's season was a little bit inflated by the 40 passing
Yeah,
touchdowns. I would be
I agree.
shocked if he does that again. But for me, the biggest push is look at Josh Allen's fantasy production and see how that's matched up. I'm just going to read off the fantasy finishes since 2019: 8, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. So he scores a ton of points. When you're talking about a guy that's going to guarantee be 400 fantasy points for your fantasy lineup, I'm all over that. And like I said, I did it last year in my couple redraft leagues that I'm in, and it worked out really well for me. So I'll probably end up trying to do that again if I can get an elite quarterback. I mean, if you can get Daniels, like you said, in the third, or maybe a guy like Lamar, obviously that's going to be equal production or very similar. But I just think that Josh Allen is such a stable asset. Barring injury, he's almost guaranteed to be a top 2, 3 quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's definitely guaranteed to be to be a top 2 or 3 quarterback for sure. I mean, you're locking up a guy who you know for a fact he's going to give you, unless he gets hurt. I mean, there's just to me not a world. I mean, last year Josh was playing with a bunch of misfits, right, at the skill position, and he was still able to rattle off an amazing season from a fantasy standpoint. And then again, well, I mean, here you go, right? Lamar and Jane Daniels go here at the 3-5 and the 3-6, right? Which is probably pretty accurate as to where they're going to go. I think, in years past, it's funny because over the last couple of years, right, people have shied away from drafting quarterbacks early. Now we have Allen with the legs, we have Lamar, and we have Daniels. Those three guys are going to be guys that are going to be, for the most part, in most leagues, gone by the middle of the fourth round, right? Like that's just
Yeah.
what's likely going to happen. The legs, the upside, right? Like you know that all three of them. Now, Daniels was a rookie last year, so small sample size, but from what we've seen, he has the makeup to be a guy that can finish as the quarterback one any given season, right? And we know that. And they've upgraded that offensive line too. They added Debo Samuel.
Yeah, I
Um,
was going to say they got more weapons for him too, so that's going
yeah,
to help him.
yeah. So, but let's take a look at how the second round shaped out, right? So I took Bowers at the 202. I'm trying. I think the good thing about doing these drafts now is it's about toying with builds, right? It's about getting comfortable with, okay, you're taking Josh Allen at the 211. What will the rest of your team look like if you take a quarterback that early, right? I like to, but usually to me, I like to punt the quarterback position a little bit down the road only because to me, there is a good cluster of guys that have top five potential at the quarterback position. And I feel like the positional advantage of getting, if you could double up on Jonathan Taylor and Bucky Irving, or in your case, if you got Bucky Irving and Higgins instead of Josh Allen, would you end up preferring that if you could get maybe I don't know, let's just say Justin Herbert or Jared Goff, and they finish at like quarterback 6 or 7. Now, mind you, they probably would be maybe 4 to 5 points per game off compared to, Allen, Lamar, and Daniels, right? And again, it just really depends on how your team falls. But in this scenario, I take Bowers. I'm gonna say, to be honest with you, I go back and forth between McBride and Bowers on who I like. I think at cost, I much prefer McBride. Now, in this draft, he doesn't go much farther than Bowers. In a lot of best ball drafts, he usually goes third round. In this, he ends up going at the 208, right? So if they're that close in cost, then I'll take Bowers most likely. But again, we're so early in this. I'm on the clock here. Haven't even taken a look, but I will say, Terry McLaurin here, we talked about it the other day. A lot of times he's going up at that beginning of the third round. He falls here. I'm still not comfortable biting him at that cost. I do need a running back in this situation. I'm going to go ahead and I'll bite the bullet. I'll take Kenneth Walker. Um, I there's something in my head that says maybe James Cook because Walker scares me with those injuries. Kamara goes ahead of Walker. If Kamara was there, I would have taken Kamara because I prefer him over Walker. And if I could get both of those guys at this turn here, I'd feel pretty good. But Kamara obviously goes ahead of me. So yeah, I mean, I guess. What are your thoughts on this round? I'm going to go ahead and get ready for my next pick. But I mean, is there any surprises? Is there any player you want to talk about in this round specifically and where their cost is?
Yeah, I mean, I think the name that sticks out to me, and we've done several drafts, not necessarily redraft, but Rasheed Rice. He's still climbing up draft boards pretty high. My question to you, Pete, is at the 3.9, is that a comfortable price for you for Rasheed Rice? I mean, he goes after T. Higgins, yeah, Tyreek Hill's on the board, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, but I feel like I'd rather have Marvin Harrison over Rasheed Rice. And I don't know if that's crazy to say. I mean, yes, we're going to have to deal with possible suspension, coming off injury. There's lots of considerations that we have with him. But for me, I just find myself hesitant to draft him.
S- I'm hesitant too. I don't think it's just you. I look at Rashi Rice, I look at that wide receiver room, and it is slightly crowded. The beautiful thing, the benefit that Rashi Rice has is this running game for the Chiefs. I don't expect it to be very good. They didn't really upgrade
Yeah.
it much. They brought in Brashard Smith, converted wide receiver to running back. I think he's going to be that Jerick McKinnon role. So I think that bodes well, for Rashi Rice. Does Travis Kelsey? I've seen the pictures of him. He looks pretty out of shape. So I don't. Is this his last? It's probably his last hurrah, maybe. But we've been saying it, the past 2 years now. But
Hmm.
yeah, to me, I don't really love Rice's cost, but at the end of the third round, if he can go early fourth, I mean, I would definitely be comfortable taking it. I will say I do prefer Devontae Adams over him, and honestly, I would take Terry McLaurin over Rice. I think I have to
I
think on
think
that
so
a little bit
too.
more, but I think I would take Terry over Rice as well.
Yeah, I really think I'd do the same thing. I mean, I like Terry a lot. Obviously, I'm a Washington fan, so I'm a little bit biased. But you know, I think there's a world where Jaden Daniels regresses some. Same with Terry McLaurin. I know we talked about that the other day on the show. But I still think that I'd feel more comfortable with Terry McLaurin than I would Rasheed Rice. But I understand why you're picking him. You're picking him. He's attached to Patrick Mahomes. Yes, the fantasy production hasn't necessarily been there, but I would expect it to get better. And we kind of over exaggerate a little bit. I mean, he was still a top 12 quarterback, and he's Patrick Mahomes, and I'm just not going to doubt the guy. So I think that it's an okay pick. It's just not the pick that I necessarily would make.
Yeah, I actually I prefer Devonte Adams over Rashi Rice, and I prefer Mike Evans. Um,
Mhm.
I just I think people are and people are gonna call me crazy, man. I really think people are sleeping on Hollywood Brown. I know it sounds nuts. I really think they had plans for Hollywood Brown in that offense last year. Am I gonna sit here and say that Rashee Rice is not gonna get that target share? But the thing with Rashee Rice is he's not an amazing athlete. He's not a great yards after catch player. He's a low depth of target guy who's running in the intermediates, right? And has to share the middle of the field with Travis Kelce, right? And if Travis Kelce, if teams are not respecting him as much this year, right, maybe that leads to more attention on Rice in the slot or in the intermediate game, opening up more stuff for Kelce, right? And so to me, I just I think Xavier Worthy could take another step forward, right? I mean, you're looking at Xavier Worthy, who is down here at 57 in best ball right now. Now, best ball is more about high upside. Him and Worthy go pretty close, like almost back to back, right? Just which just goes to show that the difference in best ball ADP and redraft, or managed leagues were as opposed to high stakes tournament. But yeah, I just think that there's a world where Hollywood Brown gets more involved. They clearly had big plans for him last year. And I like Rashee Rice, but again, when you look at the players around him, Mike Evans, I mean, yes, are we worried that there's a cliff and maybe he hits it? Absolutely. But when he's healthy, he's just so good. I mean, he was 14 last year and he missed how many games? And then I look at Devontae Adams, right? I would rather take a chance on Marvin Harrison Jr., who I know is going to have a much larger target share than Rashee Rice. And the possible suspension, right? Hopefully, we know more by the time redraft season really starts to kick up. But that's
But we didn't
that,
even mention injury. We haven't even talked about that.
and he's coming
That's
back from the
another
injury.
factor.
Yeah, yeah. So so that's my fear. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. It's not an explosive offense. I've been hearing it for years, and I know Tyler said in the comments, there's talks that Kansas City is going to start airing it out again. I'll believe it when I see it, man. Like the NFL, the way teams are playing Patrick Mahomes in these too high shells, like they're limiting the explosive plays, and they don't have a lot of explosive players. I'm not necessarily super sold on Xavier Worthy either. I mean, they could barely connect last year. That maybe that gets better, and he was also playing in more of the Hollywood Brown role. But that's also why, to me, it's crazy that people have no interest in Hollywood Brown. That's like in that offense, that's the player I want at the cost. He is. I mean, let's take a look at where Brown is now. Again, the ADP is a little bit skewed because it's early and there's not a lot of drafts probably happening. We're talking about what, 144. I mean, you're talking about a guy that you're probably getting in like the 13th round. I'd rather take a chance on that, who was a guy that, again, we know they had plans for him last year. So I guess that kind of, I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about with Rashee Rice?
No, I think that's a pretty good summary of that pick and what our thoughts are. I mean, we're kind of rolling through this draft a little bit. Sitting here now, I see Joe Burrow coming across, and I'm like, well, dang, that would have been nice to have at the 411 with T Higgins. But I'm not going to sweat it too much because Josh Allen is really dang good. So we'll see what comes to me. Do you have any thoughts on the draft so far? Any quick players or any ideas you've got? What you're hoping that come back to you?
I gotta say this, and my big guy, my boy King Koopa in here at the 2-9. This is my concern about Garrett Wilson, man. Like, I can't touch him at that cost. I just can't. I mean, that's a that's a pretty high cost. I'm not. Garrett Wilson, if you're telling me I can get him somewhere in like the mid third, if he starts to slide, that's when I'll start considering him. Maybe it depends on how many wide receivers go. I'd consider him at like the high third round, but I mean, borderline mid second round for Wilson. I know people are really excited about the pairing with him and Justin Fields, but I mean, I have concerns about Justin Fields. And, this is a guy in Garrett Wilson who had a ton of targets deep down the field. And Justin Fields was one of the worst at throwing the ball in terms of accuracy down the field last season. So I don't know. Are you in on Garrett Wilson? I mean, am I crazy for thinking that that's a pretty expensive cost for him?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I mean, I've been saying it all offseason that he's really good. So let's just preface that right there. I mean, he was top 12 or top 10 last year. He finished 10th overall, 154 targets, 101 receptions. The problem with Garrett Wilson is the volume has been insanely high his entire time in the NFL. So it's not necessarily like we can say, oh, the volume's going to get an uptick. Yes, Devontae Adams is gone, but what's it going to do? Go from 154 targets to 168? I mean,
Right.
yeah, that's possible, but that only amounted to wide receiver 26 the year he did that. I
Yep.
mean, if he can prove his yards, well, he already had over 1,000 yards. He had 1,100 last year. He's at 1,000 every year. You could say, well, would the touchdowns improve? Well, he had 7 last year. It's not necessarily game breaking, but it's not killing you either. So I just struggle to see where the investment pays off with as high as he's necessarily going. Because I've seen him in mocks, like you said, it's early, higher than this, and that's a pretty big bet. And let's not forget, you're also making a bet on Justin Fields, and I am not going to do that. I just can't.
I and I'm kind of with you there. I mean, look, Wilson last year ended the season as wide receiver 10 in PPR, right? But from a points per game perspective, 18th, right? And I think arguably points per game is the stat that I prefer to use when really looking at these guys. Now, a lot of times guys finish higher just because they play more games, and that's important too. Don't get me wrong, but a points per game basis, what you're getting, right? I mean, it's like the Frank Gore of fantasy, right? Frank Gore, lasted a really long time. So his numbers looked really, really good at the end of his career. But I mean, is that Hall of Fame worthy, right? Or is it just a lot of longevity? And I don't want to get into a Frank Gore conversation, but I mean, look, despite inconsistent quarterback play, Garrett Wilson is a guy who's reached 1,000 yards in each of his first few seasons, right? And so I think that is important, right? But I just think in a 17 game schedule, it's more and more common that these guys hit 1,000 yards. It's not that to me, like, I don't want to hear that argument anymore. Oh, he hit 1,000 yards with bad quarter. Okay, it's 17 games now. It's so much easier to throw the football, than ever in the NFL. And the dude had a ton of targets. I would hope he gets 1,000 yards, right? It's a first round talent. And yes, Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson had that college connection, but it's been 5 years. 5 years. Well, chemistry can be built and they can probably get back to that connection quickly. My concern is the play style fit, right? Again, I talked about it. Garrett
Yeah.
Wilson was second in go routes last season, right? 159 of his routes were go routes last year. And Fields, yes, a small sample size, 3 of 14 of his passes completed on go routes, 21% completion percentage, and he's got a 42.9% catchable ball rate, which ranked sixth worst in the NFL on deep ball passes. So it's just a lot of risk. And at that ADP, I can't stomach that cost.
Yeah, if you're gonna try and cite that, well, they have the college connection, I'm sorry, but that just it frankly doesn't matter. Like maybe it's something, but it's not enough to really sway me, and it shouldn't sway you. I mean, Justin Fields has had ample opportunity to showcase his talents, and we've been shown that he's been asked to leave each time. And that's not to say he's not a good player, because I think he's a great locker room guy. I think he's a solid backup quarterback. But if you're asking me if I want him to lead my franchise, the answer is no. That Ohio State team, yeah, he produced some great passing numbers, but that offense was loaded. And the offense at Ohio State is just different than the NFL. It's not run like that. So I struggle to see where we can just automatically anoint him again. But I do want to point out, I hope Coach is in here. You did mention that Garrett Wilson survived with bad quarterback play in New York. So does that include our man Aaron Rodgers? I'll leave it at that.
I said his first 2 seasons bad quarterback play.
Oh,
So
okay, okay,
technically, I
sorry.
mean, if you want to count Rodgers' first year, I think that's more of a mulligan. But
Yeah.
so now moving on from Garrett Wilson, I do want to talk about Jalen Waddle.
Okay.
I'm starting to buy into Jalen Waddle, and it's starting to freak me out. I
It
mean,
should.
it
It
really
should.
is. It really is starting to freak me out. But I really like his cost, right? I mean, is there a world where he's the wide receiver one over Tyreek Hill in this offense this year? I think that's absolutely a possibility. I looked, I saw some numbers, and I'll try to pull them up when you take the mic here. But with Tyreek Hill, his metrics were not great last year. Jalen Waddle, I mean, for what it's worth, had a really bad year last year. Kind of living off of that, those first two seasons where he was 15th in points per game and then 12th in points per game, right? And he's had two bad seasons back to back, but quarterback play was really bad. He's not the player that you're going to be gadgety with like Tyreek Hill, where when they had really bad quarterback play when Tua was down last year, they manufactured touches for, Tyreek Hill. Waddle's athletic, right? But it's not like, Tyreek Hill, where you're throwing a bunch of passes behind the line of scrimmage and just telling him to go get yards after catch. Waddle can do that, but it's not this, joysticky, kind of vibe. And it just wasn't the need for them to use him in that way. But in the late fifth round, early sixth round, I mean, I don't mind him. I don't mind Tet here either. I guess maybe I would rather go Tet just because of the health concerns with Waddle. And I already have Mike Evans on this team, who I do worry about health as well. I guess let me take a look here at the running backs. I'll take Harvey and then hope, because I do like the receivers here. I even like Jerry Judy, but talk to me about Jalen Waddle. Am I crazy for possibly buying into him? Are you just that far out on him? I mean, at this cost?
I mean, yeah, I think I'm out. For the most part, there's just so many factors you have to consider with Miami. Like, is he the one or is he the two? We start there. Obviously, we think Tyreek Hill is going to get his share. He's certainly aging, so it's possible it could flip. You look at the last 2 years. Waddle was wide receiver 46, wide receiver 34. Not great finishes, not great on a points per game basis. Yes, you
Sure.
can say the quarterback play was bad, and Tua was out, but do we expect Tua to play all 17 games this year? That's a whole nother level you have to deal with. And if he does miss time, then you're right back into that same boat. Is McDaniels going to get fired midseason if this team somehow doesn't turn it around? That's another issue. When you actually look at his play on the field, he played 15 games last year and 14 the year before that. Only 150 fantasy points and 198 the year after that. His fantasy finishes from the first 2 years are just inflated. One by catches that first year, 104. And
Yeah.
then the year after that, I mean, he finished as wide receiver 8. But again, I just struggle to see where it really matters. I mean, he had almost 1,400 yards that year, and I don't think he's going to replicate that. I really just don't. I think the cost, if you want to say that, yeah, you can go get him over a guy like Jared Judy, maybe, but there's also Chris Olave, Jordan Addison, Tet McMillan, Travis Hunter, Rome Odunze. I think some of those guys have higher upside than Jalen Waddle would offer your team.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think based on my build here, at least, I mean, Walker has injury concerns, Nico has injury concerns a little bit, Mike Evans has injury concerns. I think I think I'd lean Jerry Judy here. I mean, Olave and Waddle, the reason that they're priced in where they are, the injury concerns are baked into their cost, right? I'm gonna go with Jerry Judy here. I think Kevin Stefanski's unlocked something a little bit with him where I think they really, really like him. They paid him a good amount of money. And for what it's worth, I mean, he you talk about a guy that can have big games. I mean, I think he went off for what 200 yards against my Broncos. Later on in the season, right? I mean, so
235.
yeah, I mean, so 235 yards. So I mean, I'm good taking a chance on Judy. I think, yeah, the quarterback situation is a little scary, but hey, at least they have options there. If Tua Tagovailoa goes down, right, it's Quinn Ewers, right? I don't know who their other quarterback option is. Maybe Mike White still. I don't know, but at least Judy has Flacco, who he
Well,
maybe not going to win
they
the game,
added
but he's going
Zach
to get the
Wilson,
ball.
so
Zach Wilson,
they
right?
added Zach Wilson, so I think that's a solid backup. I mean, say
Yeah,
what you want, it's
yeah,
it's okay.
yeah. I think that's fine. Um, But yeah, so I guess here on the turn, right? Let's take a look at some of these teams really quick. And is there any team that you think really is standing out to you? I've seen in the chat a lot of teams like Team 10. A lot of people like Team 10. Sorry. I've also heard that Team 1 looks pretty good
Mhm.
too, based on their draft. The team that really sticks out to me here is Shell. Jefferson, Jacobs, Taylor. I mean, really, really strong running back room. He gets an anchor wide receiver in Jefferson, right? And then you have the Worthy upside where there's a little risk there, sure. But Sutton should be a fine, low to mid end wide receiver too. I believe, when we talk about Terry and Sutton, I think I'd rather Sutton at cost. When you look at the touchdown, quote unquote, regression, Sutton's had back-to-back years where I think he had 8 and then 10 last year. So the touchdowns are there for Sutton. He's shown that he can do it on a year in, year out basis, where Terry with 13, I just, I don't want to make this a whole big Terry McLaurin conversation again, but just looking at his team, I just prefer Sutton at cost over Terry, who again, in a lot of situations is Terry's going, up here. He ends up sliding to the 4-5. I think that's a much more palatable cost, but you're going to see Terry's going to be going somewhere in that mid third round, come late August.
Yeah, it just looks like we might have some sharp drafters in here. So shout out to everyone that joined. We appreciate you being in here.
Yeah.
If we want to get into this Terry versus Sutton, I lean Terry, but I get either way. It's splitting hairs in my opinion. As we approach my next pick, I do want to say Chris was in here and he asked us, is there a world where Matt drafts Tet over Hunter? And that world is not happening today. So we already had Tet come off the board. If I had that opportunity, would it happen? I don't know. I don't think so, but you never know, Chris. It could.
So let me ask you. I mean, you go Zay Flowers. I don't really love the crop of receivers here, so I get it. I think I prefer Devonta Smith over Flowers. I get it. Flowers is the wide receiver one. I think it's a little more overrated based on, their offense, but I think I'd rather Devonta Smith. Talk to me about Flowers. Like, are you in on Flowers this year? Is it just the way the board fell, or what are your thoughts
It's
on Flowers?
it's partially the way the board fell. But then I also think that when we talk about Lamar's year, yes, I critiqued him just a minute ago for saying I don't think the 40 touchdowns happens again. But Zay Flowers only had 4 touchdowns, so there's a world where I think that number goes up. He had 116 targets, he had 108 his first year, and he's had 74 catches and 77 his first year. So I think he's a player that they keep involved. He's their best wide receiver by far, and they just constantly give him the ball by little screens, dink and dunks, and he just finds a way to make plays and get down the field. I mean, lots of games where he had 10, 11, 12 targets. So I think that if Lamar is going to continue to progress passing the ball like he did this past season, because let's not think that the offense is necessarily going to change much, I think he's going to be the benefactor of that. It's a little bit scary. Don't get me wrong. I would not want Zay Flowers to be my wide receiver too, and in a normal fantasy league, but that's just kind of how the board fell. So it's what I'm dealing with.
I look at Zay Flowers, man, and I mean Lamar threw 40 touchdowns right last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. 40, right? That's what we said.
Yep.
Zay Flowers caught 4 of them as the wide receiver
Only
one on the
4.
team. Only caught 4.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of scary, right? I mean, and so I mean, how much meat is there, right? You have Derrick Henry, right? You have Lamar. So like Zay Flowers is arguably what, the 3rd or 4th option in the red zone on his team. Is that fair to say? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, behind
Yeah, I'd
Lamar,
say.
behind Henry, and then he's probably still behind Andrews. I know everybody thinks Andrews is just vanishing out of thin air this year, and he's because I think the bad taste in our mouths of how he started the season, but then also like the playoff game where he dropped the pass, and there's been hype around Isaiah Likely. I think Mark Andrews is still going to be the number 1 tight end on this team. I mean, am I crazy to think that, or?
No, I would say Mark Andrews over Likely easily, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, is he number 3 in the red zone? Probably. I mean, he had 11 touchdowns last year, so pretty solid outing from him.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is going to come in the red zone. It's not like he's making plays down the field. He certainly can, but I just think that there's a world where 4 is just a little low, and he could have more than that. So,
Yeah.
maybe I'm crazy. Who knows?
No, there is a world with that, and I'll let you take your pick here, but let's dive into the Mark Andrews and Likely conversation, right? I mean, Mark Andrews is 29 years old. Like at the tight end position, that's still pretty young. I mean, this is a guy who, look, likely and him are both going to be free agents next year. There is a world where Isaiah Likely is getting a very large contract and he walks and they keep Andrews. There is a possibility that that happens too. And that might be good for Likely from a dynasty standpoint because honestly, getting out of this offense, that might be the best thing for him because I don't think this offense really fits him. He's not a good blocking tight end, really. Can he do it occasionally? Sure, but that's not his thing. And this is an offense that loves to run the football, right? That's why Mark Andrews is out there a lot because he can block. And that's my concern with, you know, with Likely and when we look at Mark Andrews, right? Look at his season last year. Very slow start. I get it. I mean the dude had 2 games in a row, week 3, week 4, we had 0 points, right? And then 3 points in the opener and Likely had a big game against KC. And then week 2, we had 9 points, right? So we had a total of 12 fantasy points in 4 weeks to start the year. But then he goes off and gets 9.5, 15, 20, 14, a down week with 4, then 18, a down week with 4 again. And then he goes on a tear to end the season, 15 points, 18 points, 10 points, 14, 15, and 15, right? And then obviously you get to the playoffs, which is actually in here for Pro Football Focus's stats. So like, I mean, he was a tight end 7 in points per game last year and tight end 6 on the year. I think we forget that. And I'm not falling into this Isaiah Likely trap again, where people kept trying to tell me that he was going to take over the role. I got news for you.
Yeah.
Mark
No.
Andrews would not be there anymore if they didn't want him. Like they could get something very solid in terms of draft capital for Mark Andrews, at least a third for him. At least. Am I crazy?
No, not at all. I mean, last year likely was a product of everyone chasing the week 1 points. It
Yes.
was a massive outing. No way around that. 12 targets, 9 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. He made plays all over the place. If I'm not mistaken, didn't he have a touchdown call back too? I
Yeah,
mean, I
it
could be
was.
wrong.
That's how
I
they
don't
ended up.
remember.
Kansas City won because his toe was like kind of on the line. It looked like, but it couldn't get overturned because it was a call. It was the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. So when you see that matchup, everyone their eyes got big and they were all over it, and then he pretty much burned you the rest of the year.
So
So
bad.
if you wasted 100% of your fab, or if you decided to drop Andrews and pick him up, it did not work out. I mean, he had 42 catches for 477 yards. Yes, he had 6 touchdowns, but likely is the number 2. He's very athletic. He's a good player, but this is Andrews' job. It's his job to lose.
I agree. I mean, and people, truthfully, there was a lot of talk in the offseason, that Likely was going to likely take that job last year, right? I think it was because Andrew was kind of coming off of that injury. I don't think he was. I don't know if it was. Yeah, it was 2023. He had the tightrope, right? And but
Mhm.
I think that's also part of the reason you could expect Andrews to have a really good season this year. These guys that have this tightrope injury, they usually take a year to come. I'm not a doctor, but that's what it usually seems like. It seems like it's about a year until they come back and they're the same person, right? So I think we can close the book on that. There was a question in here I do want to get to from Dean, and he said, "Is the 6'10" too early for Bo Nix?" I think it just depends on what's on the board here, right? I have Nix. I don't think it's too high, only because I have Nix as I think I somewhere on my quarterback 7, behind
Ooh.
I have Baker ahead of him, I think, and I have him at like 7-8 right now. I'm not taking Mahomes over Knicks. I'm just not doing it. I know it sounds crazy. That run game's not that great, but I'm still going to take Knicks. I mean, Mahomes has shown me nothing to pretty much. He has shown me nothing
Hang on.
to
He has
clarify his
shown
draft
you
status. No,
nothing?
no,
Look at all that
I
green.
meant from a
Look at all
fantasy.
that green.
I meant from okay, quarterback 8, quarterback 11. I meant to say nothing in the last 2 years. I mean, quarterback 8, where were you drafting him in 2023 coming off of the QB1 season? In 2023, you were drafting him top 3. Last year people were drafting him as the 4th best quarterback off the board. He went 11. I mean, to me, has the offense improved so much? That offensive line is scary, dude. Am I crazy? I mean,
Well, you
they
already
bring in the kid from Ohio State, but I still got concerns about the offensive line.
Yeah, well, first of all, great tackle. But anyways,
Yeah.
back to fantasy. I do think that you gotta mention you already had this big grandstand on Hollywood Brown. If Hollywood Brown's gonna be a guy, if Rice is gonna have a role, if Kelsey is still involved, what that looks like, I don't know. But Worthy's there. Does that connection go further? I just think that we kind of get a little bit too caught up in the fantasy finish of Patrick Mahomes. It had the number 12 next to it, in that, or 11, whatever it was. It feels scary, but at the end of the day, he was still really good. I mean, he scored an insane amount of fantasy points in his career. And maybe I shouldn't say really good. He was fine. He was a top 12 quarterback. He was fine.
But this is my thing about that. Okay, you're drafting Patrick Mahomes as the QB7 right now, 6 or 7. Okay, on a points per game basis, that he is yes. Was Mahomes quarterback? 11 last season. Yes, on a points per game basis, Mahomes was. Let's see. Let me filter out for snaps here.
Well, while you're looking at that, the one thing I want to mention is we kind of sit here and we fail to say, well, who has the highest upside? Is I hate to say it because we keep saying it. Is there a world where Baker or Bo Nix or insert quarterback that's on the board, Herbert, finishes as the number one overall quarterback? I don't think so. Could Mahomes do it? Would it shock you? No, it would not shock me. I mean, we saw Brady back in 21 with Tampa Bay. He finished the quarterback 3.
So I'm gonna
So,
take
I'm just
Scadaboo here.
saying.
No. So here's the thing. In a world, yes, is the best quarterback in the NFL. Does he have a possibility at finishing quarterback one? Absolutely, totally get that. My thing is, you look fantasy is different than NFL. Their style of
Mhm.
offense is not high pace, right? Coach talked about it before. This run game, until it gets better, teams are not coming out of that too high shell. There's not going to be a lot of explosive plays. That's my concern. You look at it from a points per game perspective, right? Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback, 11 in points per game last year. The next one, two, three, four, five, six. Russell Wilson, who was quarterback 17, averaged just 2 points less per game than Patrick Mahomes. So to me, it does not make sense to draft Patrick Mahomes unless you think there's a world where he's going to has top 3 upside. If he doesn't, you're drafting a guy who is not going to be that much far off than guys you're taking 4 or 5 rounds behind him. That's my concern. Forgetting about Bo Nix or Baker, if you like Mahomes better than them, I'm not going to sit there and argue that. That's fine, right? I don't expect everybody to have those guys higher. But to me, on a points per game basis, and when you talk about opportunity cost, I mean, we're talking about Tua Tagovailoa scored 1 point less than Patrick Mahomes last year. We're looking at, Geno Smith, who was drafted at like quarterback 22 last year, had one and a half to about 1.5 points less per game than Mahomes. That's my concern. You make a good argument in that. Could you see Mahomes being quarterback one? Only because he's the best quarterback in the NFL and arguably top 4, top 2, top 3, whatever, all time. That's the only argument that I have for Mahomes is he's great, his greatness. Outside of that, there's nothing else that points to me that he has that ability this year. I just don't think, just based off how the offense likes to run and what they like to do and the teams limiting their big play abilities. And if they do have Hollywood Brown in, I think that again makes them want to play too high shell even more to limit the deep passes downfield and force them to run the football effectively.
That's fair. I mean, I get it of why you might take some other names over him. Um, the Bo Nix one just feels a little bit rich to me. Might be chasing the lightning, but he did it. That's the other thing is he did it last year. There's no denying he's already proven he can be top 7 or top 8. I don't remember what he
Well,
finished, but somewhere around there.
he was a half point better. No, I sorry, a point better than Mahomes last year, and he's a point like you're also talking about. He uses his legs, and you're also talking about how he's cost less. Bo Nix is like the quarterback 11 to 10. You're talking about Mahomes. You're taking him 3 to 4 rounds ahead of him. Now, in this situation, in this draft, yes, Bo Nix goes same round as Mahomes, right? It just depends what league you're in, right? Some people get panicked and they take quarterbacks higher, right? In most best ball drafts, which is different than redraft, I get it. Nix is quarterback 12, 11. Pat Mahomes is quarterback 6, 7, right? So to me, it's not enough of a points per game difference where I would rather go take another player in this area, right? Maybe you take a swing on Laporta or a Dunze if they fall to you, right? Like, and go get a guy like Baker or Nix, who even if Mahomes is better, I think it's maybe a 1 point difference. Like, if you're not getting those top guys, in my opinion, like in this range, Allen, Jackson, Daniels, and Hurts, if you're not getting either of those four, like, I don't even think Burrow's cost is justified. He's not a mobile quarterback. The defense stinks, but like, it's a pocket passer. Like, you have to, like,
He's the
he's got to
exception,
throw.
though.
No, I know, but you got to throw for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns to make up for that opportunity cost if you're taking him fourth round.
Yeah.
He's not going to do it with his legs. Now, and that defense sucks. So again, my point is the odds of him finishing top 5 are unlikely, as crazy as it sounds, for Burrow because of his no upside with his legs at all. But again, game script, bad defense. I totally get taking him because they're probably going to be top 5 in passing attempts, right? I don't think we're going to argue
Yeah.
that, right?
No, not at all.
So, all right. Well, why don't we take a look at your team?
Sure.
So yeah, so you have a quarterback, right? You took Allen, right? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So give us a little rundown on your team.
Yeah, I've got Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, James Conner as my first 2 running backs, and I've got T. Higgins, Zay Flowers. I've got Jordan Addison in the flex, Roma Dunze and Najee Harris on the bench. Originally, my plan was to see if I could get Caleb Johnson. He was buried on the sleeper ADP at like
Mm,
90 something. So
yeah.
I thought there was a chance he would make it back to me. Did not happen. That's okay. I thought about addressing tight end, maybe seeing if I could get one to fall to me here. We had a little bit of a tight end run with Evan Ingram going. So I'm kind of just going to punt the tight end position for right now. I
Yeah.
mean, looking at the board, there's Tyler Warren. I'm not making that bet. Jake Ferguson, no thanks. So I think for me, I'm just going to hold, just try and draft some depth pieces that I think I can start and make an impact on my roster. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah. I think I don't really know what to make of Jordan Addison. I go up and down with him. I can't really get a read on how I feel about him. I don't find myself ever drafting him, and every time I had him last year, super frustrating. I don't know what to make of Addison. I think he's probably third option behind Hawkinson. In that offense, maybe I could see him edging out Hawkinson in passing attempts, but we don't know what they're going to do. How much are they going to throw the football with McCarthy? Outside of that, I prefer Dunze over Addison. There's a world where I'd prefer Dunze over Zay Flowers. I know that sounds crazy from an opportunity cost standpoint. I love a Dunze's cost compared to Flowers. Obviously, I love Higgins. You get Barkley. There's some injury. There's some concern with Connor with the health, but I mean, he looked damn good, man. He's almost getting better with age. Najee Harris should be a
Fine
safe
wine,
floor
man.
guy. Najee Harris should be a safe floor. I mean, I'm fine with him being at like your RB3. I would just be trying to shoot for upside on running backs the rest of the way.
As I take a wide receiver. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get someone to fall back to me, just kind of playing the board. I mean, like you said, now's the time to test builds, see what happens.
Yes.
Um, at this point, I've kind of filled out the wide receiver position. In my opinion, you mentioned what do we make of Addison? Is he the second or third option on the team? I would go with second, but at the same time, he's been a top 24 wide receiver both years. So that matters to me.
Yeah.
I'm also someone that has a lot of conviction with JJ McCarthy. Not everyone's going to feel that way, and I understand he hasn't played a snap, he hasn't proved it. But in my opinion, I'm pretty high on him, and I think he has the ability to play at a high level. He's with a great coach, and not to mention he has Justin Jefferson on the opposite side of him. So it's not like Addison's going to be getting necessarily clamped every single weekend. Teams are going to be trying to scheme out Justin Jefferson because he's that dang good.
Yeah, I mean, and look, in a world, I mean, maybe that opens up, opens up some opportunities for Addison. He had some pretty big weeks last year. I mean, I think for Addison, it's really more about the inconsistencies for him. I'm with you. I'm a big believer in JJ McCarthy. I do think they're going to lean on the run game. I don't think that's going to be more of a slight to McCarthy. I do really like what they did with this offensive line. I mean, their defense is going to be really good. So game script wise, they might play a lot of ball control, and then there's a lot of these big shots to Jefferson, and they get these big chunk plays, and then it's a lot of ball control like consistently from that. Points per game basis, Jordan Addison, right, 22nd in points per game. I think that's pretty fair, right? Where you're drafting him. I mean, I just let me pull up his game log at least. He had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 games of 13 or more fantasy points. It's a pretty decent floor, but the lows can be low for him, right? I mean, he had a couple of games where he had 6 points, 4 points, a couple 9 point games, a 1 point game that was against Detroit though, and that doesn't count. I sometimes these games again for their stats and player profile get filtered in, and you got to watch that you don't include that. But yeah, I mean, again, he's just the targets aren't very high for him, but he's a guy that can do a lot with a little. I think that's the best way to put it. I mean, but he did get a good amount of targets towards the end of the season, man. I mean, he went on a stretch where he had 8, 9, 6, 12, 9, 8, and 8. And the air yards were pretty solid for him. So I guess I don't hate it. I mean, there's a chance too if he ends up being the wide receiver one if JJ was to get hurt. I mean,
That's
that's
what I was
a
going to say.
I mean, and you look at Waddle, where yeah, if Tyreek gets hurt, if JJ gets hurt or Tyreek gets hurt, which one of these two guys do you prefer? Addison,
Yeah,
right?
I would take Addison. Yeah.
So, but do you have any other thoughts on Addison before we move on?
No, I think we should concretely view him as the wide receiver too. Or excuse me, the second option in this
Yeah,
offense. Yeah, Hawkinson's going to find his way, but let me pull it up here. Obviously, he was coming off the injury last year, so he missed a bunch of time. I mean, nearly half the season. But when you
yeah.
really step back and look at it, it's not necessarily going to impact Addison that much, in my opinion. I don't expect the offense to change. Like you said, they're going to lean on the run, but that's kind of already been this offense, anyways. They've always had a consistent balance throughout the entire offense. No matter who's playing quarterback, no matter what's happening, they just kind of find a way to win. And I think that's just because O'Connell's a really dang good coach.
Yeah, he is, yeah, Hawkinson I think took a little bit of time to get right last year, and so full season, full off season, healthy, right? Does that help? In 10 games, 62 targets, right? That's 6 targets per game. That's a pretty healthy target share. An 18.4% target share for a tight end was good enough for 12th. That's solid, right? And you would expect him to do more. He only ran 40. He was 43 in routes run, which was 174. He only averaged 17.4. I think 17.4 routes per game. That's not a lot for him. So I think they really took their time easing him into that offense.
Yeah. I want to say, Chris said now's the time for me to put the money where our mouth is and draft T Law. I wish I could. I mean, I have Josh Allen. I'm a big believer in T Law. Is he even still available?
He might be.
Yeah, he is. He's buried on this sleeper ADP here. So that might be a late round value for me. If I don't necessarily draft a guy high end, that's not out of the question for me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Shift gears here.
Sure.
Luther Burden or Jaden Reed, right? I think the floor is very scary for both of them. Um, I I've been in this situation a few times now. I've recently done a couple of redrafts, and I keep finding myself taking Luther Burden more and more over Jaden Reed when I get to this spot. Um, I think the defense is going to be a lot worse for Chicago. And I think the Packers have shown us that they like to run the football down the stretch in the season. And I have concerns about Jaden Reed. He's a limited route tree. The floor is very low, like I said. And Burden's floor, while it's scary not because of skill set. It's scary because of the crowdedness in the room. They can manufacture touches for him similar to Jaden Reed, but his route tree is much better than Jaden Reed. So it's not the floor isn't as scary from an ability standpoint. It's scary because of the targets available in the offense. But if DJ Moore or Roma Dunze go down and he's thrusted into that second wide receiver option with a really bad defense, I mean, that's a guy I want to own. And I think at this point in the draft, I mean, my wide receivers are set. I have Nico, I have Evans, I have Judy. Jaden Reed, I don't care for him as a wide receiver four, but give me Luther Burden because I think the upside is higher, and he's in a more advantageous offense based on game script.
Yeah, I think it'd probably depend on my build.
Yeah,
If I have a team where I've already got four wide receivers, am I going to take Reed over Burden? I might take the upside shot on Burden. If I had fewer wide receivers, say you only had three, I think I'd probably lean Reed over Burden just because immediate production
sure.
and immediate value to my roster. But it just kind of depends. I mean, there are two guys that are in that same kind of slot role, going to be moved around. Is it going to necessarily manufacture into a bunch of targets for Reed? We've never really seen that. If you pull up his box scores, you never see him go above six targets. It just doesn't really happen. He's got one game with eight. That's it. So it's just a limited volume. They added Matthew Golden, who myself, I'm very high on him. But I think his days of being the possible wide receiver one in this offense are over.
Yeah.
But he has some fantasy value to offer, but it's not going to be anything to really break your roster. It'll be a flex spot or kind of playing the matchups.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just you look at Reed in 2 seasons, he's never eclipsed the 100 targets. Even last year, Christian Watson goes down. You expect him to take a step forward. Week 1 against the Eagles, you're sitting there thinking, this is the wide receiver one in this offense. He ends up finishing with 75 targets, and he played every single game last year. Now they add Matthew Golden, right? And Christian Watson's out, right? He's might good chance he doesn't play this year, right? I don't know how quickly he's going to heal from that ACL. He played 10% of the slot snaps. You're talking about a guy that played in the slot 10th most in the NFL last year. That should be a high floor player when you're playing in the slot that much. But again, the offense just doesn't like their game script. It's just not advantageous. They're playing in a positives game script last year where they had the lead and they did not have to throw the football a ton. And I don't think this defense got much worse. And I just again I look at Jaden Reed, right? I mean, target rate, he was ranked 60, right? He was targeted on 20% of his routes. Target share, 16.2%. They added in Matthew Golden. They didn't get worse, they got better. Christian Watson was not a heavy target, heavy volume wide receiver. I was high on Christian Watson coming into the year, but he's a big play player. He's a red zone threat. Like Jaden Reed, a 16.2% target share in 17 games when they had Romeo Dobbs was like wasn't he benched for like 2 games? I
Yeah.
mean, like just so I mean, who else? Dontavian Wicks. Like, I just, I don't know. Jaden Reed's just a frustrating player. I try to buy into him,
Mhm.
but I just can't.
Frustrating is when you need a tight end and three go back to back to back. That's what frustrating is. My original plan here was to take Tucker Kraft. That was my goal after I drafted Keon Coleman, was to have Kraft fall back to my lap. But apparently the team that has McBride needs him too. So I appreciate you, Mike. And then, Loveland, we've talked a lot about him in our dynasty content. I'm not sure I would have drafted him here, especially having Laporta, but I get it. I do think he's a really good player. So I'm going to go with Tajay Spears. I think he's a guy that has an opportunity to lead the backfield. Pollard's really good, but I do like Spears and his, participation in this offense. We'll have to see. I'm at this point. I'm just trying to get some running backs to fill this roster. And Trey Harris goes. That's an interesting pick.
Yeah, Trey. I mean, I don't hate the Trey Harris pick at all. I guess if you look at his room, I'm a little worried because is Ayuk ready week 1? I don't know. I love his first 2 wide receivers, but there's risk where I don't know if you're getting immediate. You talk about immediate production with Jaden Reed, and if he's your wide receiver 4, we're talking about you're hoping that Trey Harris or Ibuka could possibly step in for Ayuk and give you an immediate impact. Now, let's keep in mind this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, so you don't have to start 3. So I mean, in that case, maybe you can take a chance and wait. But I mean, in this situation, I think he double up on tight ends here. I didn't like that. I don't think he had to press and go get Kincaid. If you were going to take the chance on Kelsey, like you better believe in him, because I prefer Laporta, Andrews, Evan Ingram, Njoku. I prefer all of them over Kelsey right now. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm not. Kelsey 6th round, or you can get Ingram at the 8-1 or Njoku at the 8-5, and you look at the players that you passed up on. You could have got Roma Dunze. Like, I mean, so I worry about that a little bit. But I don't hate the Trey Harris pick. I worry about Ibuka because we've talked about it. Like, it could take him a couple weeks to really earn a solid workload in that offense.
Yeah, and the other thing too is Kincaid has frankly been bad. Like there's
Yes.
no way around it. He has not paid off. But we can spend a whole bunch of time talking about tight ends if we wanted to. I think that Harris has an opportunity to be fantasy impactful year one. We saw what Ladd did this past year. Ladd's a fantastic player. It's no discredit to him. I think he remains a high end fantasy asset, regardless of the format, redraft, dynasty, doesn't matter. But Trey Harris has a role where he can step in and be that X on the outside. He's different than Ladd McConkey. They do different things. And Harris excelled at Ole Miss, and he really did it in a short period of time. He only played 8 games last year, and he was still first team All SEC. He had 1,000 yards. He's a fantastic player, man. I can't speak enough about him. I know I talked a lot during our offseason rookie stuff, but going forward, there's a lot to like about Justin Herbert and what his offense gained, and what he can get going for him. So there's a lot to like for me.
Yeah, and we talk about an immediate impact. Trey Harris does have the ability to have an immediate impact. I do
Mhm.
truly believe that. I mean, Joshua Palmer, I mean, is now gone, and I mean, I get it. You know that. I'm not saying he was amazing, but when we talk about vacated targets, in that offense, right? Quentin Johnson was borderline at 100 targets last year, right? He had 91. Joshua Palmer had 65. Will Dissly had 64. Stone Smart had 19, right? I mean, there are targets to go around. Now I get it. It's likely a run first offense, and that worries people. And I'm not going to sit here and say that shouldn't concern you, but he should. I mean, if you figure Joshua Palmer 65 targets is now out the window, maybe you give 40 of those to Ladd, right? I think Ladd very, very likely can give you 140 targets this season, right? So that's actually about 30. Let's call it he'll get to 142. That's 30 targets from Joshua Palmer. The other 35, let's just say, go to let's give them all to Trey Harris. Quentin Johnson at 91. If you cut Quentin Johnson down to, let's just say, 60 or 55, right? Now you're talking, if all those go to Trey Harris, now you're looking at him getting 70, right? And then maybe Will Dissly, who had 64 targets. I don't think he does that again. There are targets to go around, but again, the concern is, right, it's a run first offense, but there's some no names that got targets in this. Darius Davis had 17, Simi Fekoko, I don't even know who that is, had 16. Jalen Rager had 12. Hayden Hurst had 13. DJ Chark had 10. Like, there are places you can make up for where those targets were going to absolute no-name players.
Well, the other thing too that we're not mentioning is that this is the best receiving core Herbert has had since 2021, when it was
Yes.
Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. He was quarterback 2 that year. He
Yes.
threw for 5,000 yards, so he had 38 touchdowns. This past season he had only 3,800 yards, almost 3,900, 23 touchdowns. I think he can improve on that a little bit, but like I said, I think Harris is a major upgrade for this team. Yeah, they want to run the ball. Jim Harbaugh's going to establish the run. They're going to play good defense, but it also was the Ladd McConkey show last year, and now they've added a guy that can stretch the field, as a fantastic route runner. And by the way, when he gets in space, he can make a play. We saw QJ, that experience didn't necessarily work. Lots of drops, lots of inconsistency. They drafted Trey Harris for a reason. And I think, like I said, he steps into an immediate role. He's going to be fantasy impactful. I can't speak enough about Trey Harris.
Yep, I agree. So let's move on to the back end of this round. A lot of rookie wide receivers. This entire round, actually, if you include Trey Harris, because this last pick hasn't gone in the last 12, we've seen one, two, three, four, five rookie wide receivers. I think this is kind of the sweet spot where you start taking chances on them. Um, Christian Kirk's still on the board. Jaden Higgins goes before him. Now, Christian Kirk's role is going to be more in that slot where Jaden Higgins is probably going to be on the other side of Nico. But interesting here, if there's a wide receiver in this range between Jaden Higgins, Kyle Williams, Jack Besh, let's even lump Trey Harris and Igbuka. Is this how you see it shaping out in terms of what you prefer? Do you prefer Trey Harris over all of them and Igbuka, or what's your preference?
Yeah, I'm going to go Trey Harris over all of them.
Okay.
Ibuka, that one's tough because I believe in the player. My dynasty mind is turned on of don't worry about it, don't worry about it. But I'm not sure I can really follow through with that. The name that I would say next is it's either going to be Kyle Williams or Jack Besh, and I don't know if
Hmm.
that's crazy to say. I like Higgins a lot. I know me and you were both in on him prior to the draft. We watched some Iowa State tape together and talked a lot about his big frame while still being athletic. And that's going to be great for CJ Stroud. But I just have some concerns with Nico being there, Joe Mixon being there. They added his teammate, Jalen Noel, who's also a fantastic player out of the slot. And they have Christian Kirk. So there's just so many weapons that I think that might hamper his development early. And it might take a year or two for him to really grow into that role. Whereas Kyle Williams, I think there's a world where he steps in and is the wide receiver one for this team. Yes, Diggs is there, but who knows? There's lots of question marks with Diggs right now. Jack Besh, he steps into an immediate role in Las Vegas. He has a chance to be the leading wide receiver on this team. Jacoby Myers is there. No discredit to Jacoby. But, Jack Besh is a tough guy, kind of that Puka Nakua role. I hate comparing people to guys like Puka, but it's true. He plays like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I took Besh there. I go back to back with the rookie wide receivers here, in my opinion, right? I have a solid foundation with my receivers in Nico, Mike Evans, Jerry Judy, right? And then I have Burden and Besh, right? Like two guys that, there is definitely risk there. Besh probably makes an immediate impact quicker, but I'm willing to take a chance on the upside there. And then I go with Rashad White, who you hate. Let's be real. You hate Rashad White. I do want to get to King Koopa's comment here first, and then I'll get to the Rashad White thing. He said, "If I could change one pick, I would go I would go with Ingram over Mahomes. I saw the tight end run coming a mile away and went against my better judgment." Yeah, I think that was kind of my thoughts too, right? I mean, Laporta went before you, right? And so maybe at that point, maybe that's a trigger to say, maybe you didn't really love Andrews and you were thinking you could get Ingram on the way back to you. But yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And that's why I said, like, I mean, Justin Herbert here, Matt, at the 10-4. That's my thing about Mahomes. I mean, is there a world you're talking about how he has the best receivers that he's ever had since Mike Evans and Mike Williams and Keenan Allen? Is there a world where Justin Herbert ends up being, the number one quarterback or top five? There is a world where Herbert's top five. I don't think top one. I don't think he has that yet, but he does have the legs to do something like that. I just think that offense is not set up for him to do it. But that's my concern about Mahomes too. I don't think the offense is set up right now for him to do it unless Andy goes back to his old ways. But I think they're kind of changing what the offense wants to do.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. And I do have a team I want to talk about once we come back to that.
Yeah, we
But
don't need to talk about Rashad White. We can talk about him later when we recap the teams. He's not important enough.
that's a good way to approach it, Pete. I'm proud of you. Good job. But yeah, I think you're right. Of Herbert might be the better value play there if you get one of these other guys that was around Patrick Mahomes' name, maybe Andrews, maybe Caleb Johnson. I don't know, whoever it was, Ingram certainly. The team I really want to focus on, Pete, is Team 8. If the running backs stay healthy and Derrick Henry and Brees Hall, this team is pretty dang good. I mean, he's got CeeDee Lamb, he's got Terry McLaurin, Chris
Mm-hmm.
Godwin.
Yep.
He has Dak Prescott at quarterback and Joku. I think that's a solid team, veteran heavy. might be a little weak at wide receiver of not necessarily having a guy. It's a bank on Terry McLaurin. But if Terry repeats, this team is rolling well.
Yeah, this is a build where, I have, I've shared my concerns with Terry and the regression, but getting him at the 4 or 5, I talked about it. He goes after Mike. Like, I'm okay with him in this spot. Behind Adams, behind Harrison, behind Evans, that's where I have him right now. But in this spot, getting him as your fourth player with this build, I'm fine, right? I think I have concerns about Godwin, but I personally would rather take a chance on Judy or McMillan, because I just worry that Godwin, they're talking about him not being ready to start the season as a possibility. So there's concern for me there. But overall, yes, I would agree with you. I really like this team as well. And again, this is a situation. You get Dak Prescott here. Like, there's just so many good quality quarterbacks at the end that if you're not getting that upper echelon, the top 3, top 4 guys, like, there's just so much quality that these guys are going to give you good floors, right? Like, so I mean, capping it off with Dak, where he didn't worry about the position at all. He punted tight end and gets Njoku. I think him and Evan Ingram are the best tight end values on the board in pretty much every draft that I'm in, and Tucker Kraft. And honest to God, I think Zach Ertz is still going to be a nice value. He's just a guy that you can just plug into your lineup every week, but not every
My
week. But
thoughts as well.
if you need 8 points, which at the tight end position is hard to find consistently every week, Zach Ertz has got your back.
Yeah, that's kind of why I took him. It was ahead of his ADP by about 20 spots. I didn't think he would make it back to me if I didn't take him.
Yeah.
But he's just a vet that you're going to know pretty quick of whether he's washed or he's still going to be involved in the offense. And I think the team's good enough that he's going to have that chance to continue to progress. So I'm back on the clock here. I think King Koopa's point of there are still 9 good options left on the quarterback position. I don't know if there's 9. I didn't go count, but you're spot. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is still there. Kevin Stroud, JJ, like there's options there. Matthew Stafford, like he mentioned, like that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He does mention Stafford, and I think there's a world like, let me ask you this: why does Jared Goff consistently the last 2 years? Jared Goff has finished as a top 10, top 8 quarterback 2 years in a row. He doesn't have the legs, right? And I know it's funny drawing the parallel to Matt Stafford because they were in the trade together, but I'm going to sit here and say, look, if Jared Goff can finish there with Ben Johnson now leaving, forgetting about I don't even, that doesn't even matter. But the offensive coordinator being elite, he has Sean McVay. They just added Devontae Adams, who I think is still really good at football. I think he's still really freaking good at football, right? And so the only thing I would say is the offensive line significantly better for the Lions than the Rams, which is the biggest concern for me for Stafford and where he'll finish. But there is a world where Matt Stafford is like quarterback 12 on the season. I don't think that's out of the question with that offense playing in a dome, right? Like the defenses in that division are not that good. You got Arizona, you got the 49ers who were bad last year. I think they'll be better this year. And then you have the Seahawks, who their defense is kind of up and down. They do have a defensive minded head coach,
Yeah,
but not that great of a defense.
yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. Well, we're kind of going through the 13th round here, kind of hitting that point of where it's getting a little bit tougher to decipher who to take, what options to take. I have a question for you, Pete. But real quick, just want to thank everyone who's tuned in with us. We've got a bunch of people watching, so be sure to like the stream, subscribe to our new YouTube here. But Pete, do you ever take 2 quarterbacks in a redraft like this, or do you just roll with as many positional players as you can get?
I typically don't.
Mhm.
If the quarterback position this year, I think is going to have such a high floor that I don't think it's necessary. I mean, you look at Matt Stafford in a league like this, it's a good chance Matt Stafford doesn't get drafted. It's a good chance he's on waivers. You look at Bryce Young, likely not drafted. Michael Penix, not drafted. Geno Smith, right? Like, if you had to plug those guys in, Geno Smith, I told you earlier in the show, Mahomes was 11th in points per game. Geno was a point and a half, I think, below Mahomes. Like, so I mean, I think if you lose Brock Purdy and you don't have another quarterback, The replacement, it's kind of like baseball, right? They call it WAR, wins above replacement, right? The guy that you would replace him, like how much better are they above average than the average player at the position, right? Like Purdy, like some of these guys, like the guy you're replacing them with, likely not that much farther off, right? Unless those guys just hit really well and Purdy ends up being top five, or Dak ends up being top five, or Kyler ends up being in the top five. Like outside of that, like if you don't get like, it's just not a huge drop off, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, there's names with might be a little bit more of a dart throw in Jackson Dart, no pun intended. Sam Darnold's still out there. I struggled to draft two quarterbacks. I went to draft Trevor Lawrence just so I could make Chris laugh if he's still watching, but um, I decided not to. So if he makes his way back, maybe I'll take him with the 14th or 15th pick. But I just think that you can fill your roster elsewhere. Now, obviously, if we were in a true redraft, maybe you have a defense pick here, maybe you have a kicker kick, pick whatever.
Yeah,
But I just think that you can play the waivers and kind of use that to your advantage later on, as opposed to using a pick right now.
I agree. Now, by the way, you talked about teammate. I do want to get to him because Roman's in here, and I appreciate you, Roman. I know we follow each other on Twitter for a decent amount of time. Appreciate you hopping on the stream with us and coming over to YouTube. It means a lot. He said, "I'm
Yeah.
teammate. Was gonna take Judy or Ridley over Godwin, but I thought they were a reach and would come back to me." Nah, I mean, look. I'm not the highest on Calvin Ridley. I know he gets a quarterback upgrade. I just feel like I've been burned by him a lot, but then you look at his numbers and they really weren't that bad last year. I don't think
Yeah, we're
Godwin's a
sleeping on him.
bad pick though. I I'm taking Godwin over Pickens, right? You pretty easily.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
JMO.
I mean, unless we, yeah, probably, yeah,
Okay, so in that scenario, probably I would really be bummed that I didn't get Devonta Smith if I'm him. But I
sure.
know you're probably not as high in Devonta as I am. I just think but we just saw Godwin have an insane season before he got hurt. I just really just worry about, is he going to come back full strength, and they added additions to the team, like are they going to just ease him in, right? Because they don't need to lean on him as hard. That's really my concern, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, listen. First of all, I like Devonta Smith, so don't hear what I'm not saying there. I
Yeah.
really do like him. Um, but if I don't think that Calvin Ridley, that is, should be slept on as much as he is.
Yep.
If Cam Ward is as good as he could be, which if Coach was in here, he'd be telling you how great he is. And nobody reads the RPO like him, and he's going to step in because he really has the ability to do what the NFL is currently moving towards. The biggest benefactor of that is going to be Calvin Ridley. I mean, he was wide receiver 28 in terrible quarterback play last year. The year before that in Jacksonville, he was wide receiver 18. Respectable finishes, and for where you're drafting him, I think that's okay. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been a big target earner, right? 120 targets last year, 136 targets the year before. And I just think it's really just about the connection, right? Like, I mean, in 2023, he had 8 touchdowns, and in 2024, he just had 4 this past year, right? The air yards are there. I mean, 1,800 air yards last season, right? That's huge. He had 1,000 yards. Again, I'm not super impressed by the 1,000 yard seasons. It's just not a big deal to me. But Calvin Ridley, this is a guy that was arguably top 10 in Dynasty, right? Before he got suspended and when that whole thing, like people wanted him. Like he was really
Hmm.
freaking good with Atlanta. I mean, 2020, he was 18.84 in terms of points per game, which was ranked fourth. Like the ability with Calvin Ridley is there. I guess I don't know if I have such a huge take on him. I'll formulate more of a take as maybe the offseason goes. But I mean, number 3 in deep targets for him last year, right? Average depth of target, his A dot 15.7, which was 5th in the NFL last year. Air yards, right? Number 1 in the NFL for air yards with 1,883. That's 110 air yards per game. That's big play. Every single game he's getting chances to make big plays. And so there's something to be said for that. 10th in yards per reception last year, extremely efficient in that regard. Now His target rate versus man was number 7, but again, Will Levis, like it's just that whole thing last year. The actually his win rate versus man wasn't that great, 47th in the NFL per player profiler. Um, but I mean, I'm not super concerned about the win rate from player profile. I'd rather really look at like reception perception for Matt Harmon. But yeah, I think to your point, I think it's a decent price. I don't have a firm opinion on him, just yet. But I do think if you really are a big believer in Cam Ward, then Calvin Ridley is a guy that you should be interested in at his cost.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you just ran off a lot of metrics. Coach made his comment of his opportunity to really show and help this Titans team that had a solid defense, and maybe Cam Ward can elevate Ridley. Will he do it? Like Coach says, we'll have to see. I have to say that I took Trevor Lawrence solely for Chris. I just had to do it. Um, when I hit this point of drafts, a lot of teams are going to draft their handcuff, and there's value in having a handcuff. But the way that I typically play redraft, and maybe it's because I'm in a bunch of leagues with people I know and I have consistent redraft leagues, I like to draft other people's handcuffs
Mm,
because when something goes wrong, they overreact and they
yes.
panic. And I love doing that. So every year with my last pick or one of my last picks, I try to go find someone's handcuff that I think could, if something went wrong, do they have the ability to step into a role? And I think Tyler Algier is just that. If something happens to Bijan, he walks into a workload.
Yeah, I go back and forth with the handcuff thing. I think it's a very valid point, though. When you have your own handcuff, you're limiting risk, but you're also limiting upside, right? And
Yep.
you can really gain some strong leverage if you have somebody's handcuff, especially if it's a handcuff in an offense. So, what I'm starting to realize with handcuffs specifically, and the handcuffs that you want to own are actually the guys that are in offenses that generally feature one running back. Jarquez Hunter, perfect example. We talk about Kyron Williams, you go back and forth. Jarquez Hunter is a guy that I don't mind owning because he's not even going to go drafted possibly in this draft right now, right? So Jarquez Hunter is a guy who predominantly plays in an offense that
Well,
has
there you
stuck to
go.
one running back, high work. Oh, he did just go. Well, there you go. Roman's in here. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to target, like, I want to target the handcuffs in offenses that generally utilize one running back. If you think Isaac Garendo is going to be the guy over the kid that they just drafted, Jordan James, then you should pick up Garendo, right? Because of the injury risk with CMC. And this is an offense with the 49ers that we saw last year. Like, generally speaking, they stick to one back. Now, they kind of filtered guys out, but the problem was Jordan Mason kept getting hurt, and then Garendo got hurt when he finally got his chance. When CMC was down, Jordan Mason got the lion's share of that opportunity, and that's a great example of like why you want, you know, like you could look at like take Rashad White. He's a good floor RB for depth, right? The upside is not very high, right? Depending on your build, you might prefer that. But if you look at the board here and you say, I'm trying to look at a running back room.
Well, I think the perfect example is, yeah, we're talking about Hunter. He also, Roman mentions Giddens.
Giddens
That's
is
another great
Giddens is
example.
perfect. Giddens is
Brooks
perfect.
goes after that. Brooks is another great example. These are
Yes.
guys that have the ability to take over a backfield should something go wrong.
Yes. Yes. And I think Giddens Romans, that is actually the perfect example of a guy that I would probably be looking at and targeting. So I will take DJ Giddens
There you
just
go.
because Roman said that. But Giddens is a perfect example, right? I mean, Indianapolis, like when JT is healthy, it's just JT. You might say the same thing about Saquon Barkley, right? Like, who do you think? Is it Will Shipley who just goes last pick in this draft? Is it? Is it AJ Dillon? I don't know, but I know I want to figure out which one it is because that's the guy I want to draft at the end of my drafts. It's good
Mhm.
offense, good offensive line that made Miles Sanders look really good, who made DeAndre Swift look really efficient on the ground, right? Like, so again, these are just different kind of ways. There's no perfect way to draft. I would even say Trevor Lawrence. If you're going to take a quarterback, like, that's when I would take my second quarterback last round. This guy here at the 5 slot gets Jordan freaking Love at like in the last round. Like that's my point. Like
And then Matt Stafford.
dude, JJ McCarthy is actually super underrated too. Look at the quarterbacks that have gone in Kevin O'Connell's system. Like the floor is very high and he has legs. So, but anyway, we're coming up here on an hour and 30. Before we split, let's take a look at the teams really quick. If anybody is still in here, we'll gladly talk about your team. Matt, why don't you take a look? Is Roman's team still your favorite at this point? And before you look at Roman's, take a look. But I will say, Dean said, great info, guys. Soaking it all in. We appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in, Dean. If you're not subscribed already, please go ahead and do so. M1 Trock said, really liking my team as well. And Roman said, same reason I drafted Jordan Mason early. Yeah, I think that's sharp, and I think that's a valid point. Matt, why don't you go ahead and take a look at these teams though? Is Roman's team still your favorite, or is there another one that sticks out to you?
I mean, his team's really good. I think there's a lot of value there. I mentioned that first three picks of his, Lamb, Henry, Hall. That provides a lot of fantasy upside for him. Obviously, he's making the bets that Terry McLaurin and Chris Godwin can repeat what they did. You know, does one of them do it? Then that kind of saves him. If both of them do it, his team's going to compete. Um, Trying to look at the board here, see some other teams that I might like. I liked the start for team one with Chase, Bucky, JSN, and then Burrow. Hubbard's a fine pick too, so I won't critique that too much, but not a fan of the Kelsey, Ayuk, Kincaid, Javante. Those picks kind of get me a little bit off there. Any team you like while I'm still sitting here looking at them all? I'll say Hoff just because he wants me to say his team. Great job, Hoff.
I'll say with B Hoont, this is a good example of kind of landing the plane, right? Like really great start. I thought I think it's a really good start, but I just think there were some mistakes here in this four that really shape a team up to where not super high on them, right? Even taking Stroud, like you have Joe Burrow, you spent top four round capital. Like I'd rather go ahead and take a chance on any of these quarterbacks and just take them. If you're gonna take another quarterback, like go and take one of these guys. Like in my opinion, unless you're really convinced that you think Stroud has a chance to be top five. If that's your take, then I would rather just wait on Stroud and then back him up with somebody else and not take Burrow that high. But looking at some of these teams, I do have a soft spot for Shocker's team. It's not because of the Denver stack. To me, I do love the beginning stack with Genty and McCaffrey. I think in this scenario, I think I would have preferred to go like CMC London, or Genty London, not double up here because the receivers, you're putting a lot of risk in this receiver room, Matt, right? I love Devontae Adams, right? If he's my number one wide receiver, I think I'm saying it now. I think Adams and Puka will be top 15 guys this year. I really do think that. But to have him as your wide receiver one, you're putting a lot of eggs in that basket where then you have Harrison, who I like Harrison too at cost this year, but to be your wide receiver, he's not the worst wide receiver too. I just feel like I would have liked that to be flipped where if this room ended up being, let's just say, you got CMC London and then you went Adams, and instead of Harrison, you ended up going and getting James Cook. I'd feel a lot better with, Adams in London with a CMC or Genty paired with James Cook than that. So that's my biggest concern. Obviously, I love the value on Ingram, getting him late. I share my thoughts on Knicks. I think this is the right approach here, targeting running backs this late. I'm not a big fan of Bigsby. Jalen Wright's interesting right now. I think Rashard Smith is a sleeper. And you ended up corner. I actually thought you cornered because I thought Lloyd was in Philly, but that's obviously what's
Dylan,
his face? Dylan. Yeah. But
AJ Dylan.
that would be my thought on Shockers. But there was a request here from M1 Trox, and he said he is
Team 10,
uh
right?
yeah, team 10. So why don't you go take a swing there? He's gangrene right here.
Yeah, I mean, well, starting off with Brian Thomas, Drake London, that's a fantastic wide receiver combo right there. He adds Alvin as his RB1, gets Kittle in the fourth. We've got Jamison Williams, Quinton Judkins, Khalil Shakir, Matthew Golden, Tootin Fields, Kyle Williams, Purdy Likely, Jordan James, and Taj Brooks. I like this team, man. I think that it's going to be one where it kind of is going to get a little bit dicey at running back. I mean, it's a bet on Judkins. Is he going to be the guy? Obviously, I think he is. Jerome Ford's still in town, and then they drafted. I'm blanking on the name. They drafted another one in the fifth round. Can you help me out? Do you remember who that was?
You said for which team? I'm sorry.
For the Browns, I'm just
Oh,
blanking on
Dylan
who they
Sampson.
drafted.
Dylan Sampson.
Dylan Sampson. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think it's a little bit of a bet on that backfield there. Now he does project to just step right into that Nick Chubb role. Let's not forget they drafted him over a lot of other names. I mean, they had the
Mhm.
opportunity to make their pick of the litter, and they chose him. So that matters to me. Jameson Williams is going to be that volatile upside play. If he can find a way to get out in space and make some big plays for this team, that's a guy who could possibly finish as a wide receiver too. And he got him what in the fifth round.
Yeah, late
So
fifth,
I think that's an
practically
okay
sixth.
value. Yeah. Would you rather have him or Calvin Ridley, him or Ted McMillan? Maybe, but I'm not necessarily sold on Jared Judy. I know you like him and you drafted him, and
Yeah.
then you're talking about Jacoby Myers went before Chris Olave. That's actually kind of crazy. But go ahead. Sorry, I'll let you talk
No,
about
no,
his
no,
team a
no,
little
no.
bit.
I liked listening to the insight. I think you make valid points. Now, what I would say to you guys that are listening, number one, we appreciate you guys drafting with us. We're going to continue doing this. The shows are fun. They're interactive. You guys are great. You guys are doing a good job. It helps us. We're all learning here, right? Every season is a new learning experience, right? The more we draft these, the more we do them, the better feel we get for what people are thinking. And again, you just get more flavors for the kinds of builds you can put together. My thoughts on this build is I think you got greedy at wide receiver. While I love Jamison Williams, the running back room scares me a little bit. I love Alvin Kamara. I think in this scenario, though, it doesn't have to necessarily be RJ Harvey. But I would say, you spent two very high capital at the wide receiver position, right? I'm fine getting Kittle here. I like Kittle. I would maybe, I would be okay with going James Cook, but I think Kittle's fine. I like Kittle over Mixon, taking a risk on hand. Like, I'm fine with that. But I think at the Jamison Williams pick, this is where I may have considered, doubling up on running back with Harvey and Judkins, or getting Aaron Jones even with Judkins if you don't like Harvey. I don't want to continue to shove Harvey down people's throats and seem biased, but I just think a little greedy here because you're putting a lot of faith, and ironically, I'm pushing for Harvey here, but I'm going to now say that you're putting a lot of faith in rookies where Judkins, Tootin, Jordan James, and Taj Brooks. You're putting a lot of risk in rookies, and then Kamara to lead the team. And I like Kamara. I think he's great value. I think he's going to be really good if he's healthy this year. But he's also older, right? So there is some fragileness to that running back room, Matt. That's my concern.
Yeah, and then the other side too of that would be, what do you make of the Justin Fields pick? I mean, that's kind of just, you're either in or you're out. So
Yeah,
obviously, with him taking him in the 10th, that's a guy that he's in on. I personally would rather have Justin Herbert. I probably would rather have Drake May. I would rather have Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud, but I'm not a Fields believer. And if you
yeah,
are, I'm here to tell you right now, I acknowledge the fantasy upside. There is absolutely no way around it. Coach and I talk about this all the time. If he plays, he will be great for fantasy. Is it the guy that I'm going to make my bet on? No, but I'm more of a dynasty player. But I do love redraft, and I think that there's value there. If you get him in the 10th round and he finds a way to get 700 rushing yards and just say 10 touchdowns, he's going to shoot up the quarterback board.
yeah. What I'll say is this: I actually am cool with taking Fields here. I think you know this is this is the spot where if you punt the quarterback position, I don't mind doubling up here because Justin Fields is high risk, high reward, right? It's all upside. It's all freaking upside. And if he hits, I mean, you're looking at a guy that's likely going to be top 8. I have Justin Fields. I'm projecting him to play the entire season, aside from injury, right? I have him in my top 10. I have him about 10. I know that sounds crazy. I have him about 10, 11, and maybe I'm sipping the Kool-Aid too much, but I
A little
think
bit.
Brees Hall helps him a little bit. I think it takes some pressure off of him. And I just think the upside is there when he's playing games. And I know people say, well, if he was so good, why did he get benched last year? I don't think it had to do as much about Fields as it just had to do with Tomlin sticking to his veteran and thought that Russ just gives him the best chance to win and as stable. But I would say you back him up with Purdy, who is in a great system, right? Who the offense is going to be good, and he generally plays in good weather. So I'm okay with that. I think that's pretty much it. Hour 40. This was a good show. Really appreciate you guys coming in. I mean, we topped out at 26 live views on YouTube. We're still at 21 here. Obviously, you guys are entertained because you wouldn't be here for an hour and 40. So we appreciate it. It helps us out a ton. We're early on in the channel, and all of it helps. And so we appreciate the support. We'll continue to do these. We'll send the messages out in the chat to get you guys in these drafts. And Matt, do you have anything else you want to say before we check out?
Just that we appreciate everyone. Really want you to let us know what your thoughts are. If you want us to do something, tell us. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube. Go over on X and follow us. We got the new page there at First Read Fantasy. I'm really excited to continue to produce content with you, Pete, with the mediators, everyone that's on board, Hoff, and of course Chris in here, who still roasted me with some more Trevor Lawrence slam. But we'll talk about that later. I really appreciate everyone for being here. Looking forward to the next one.
All right, later, guys. Have a good one.